Well, thanks for joining me for another vlog on living in uncertain times. This is Pastor Wes Johnson. One of the most natural consequences of living in uncertainty is the fear to make any major decisions. Now, being very cautious and wise, especially in uncertainty, is extremely valid and important, but we need to be careful not to let uncertainty freeze us or make us fearful to respond and to react as God wants us to. Now, this morning, I made a decision. I needed a haircut. And so there it is. I cut my hair. Now, I've needed a haircut for the last week, but I kept putting it off and putting it off. Now, I would have put it off again this morning, but, I decided I needed to go ahead and act. Now, I will admit, cutting my hair is probably not a major decision, is it? And even if it didn't turn out well, it would always grow back again anyway. Maybe a decision that you've been putting off has much more drastic and potentially terrible consequences or good consequences. But I would encourage you, don't just hold back because of uncertainty from acting if that is really what you feel God is calling you to do. Now, my morning Bible reading today was the second half of Mark chapter 5. And part of that story had to do with a woman who dared to act even when it wasn't clear that it would make any difference at all. Let me read it, starting in verse 24. When Jesus was on his way to heal, actually raise back to life, a young girl. It says, a large crowd followed and pressed around him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had. And yet, instead of getting better, she grew worse. And when she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. And immediately her bleeding stopped and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. And at once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and he asked, who touched my clothes? Well, you see the people crowding against you, his disciples answered, and yet you can ask, who touched me? But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. And then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Now the woman dared to act, didn't she? She dared to trust. She dared to believe. There was no certainty at all that any of that would make any difference. And Jesus recognized her faith, and he gave her a blessing greater than she could probably have imagined. And so as we live in these uncertain days, don't be fearful, but be wise. Don't be hesitant to honor God in all that you do. Be safe, but do not neglect God's call and commission. Maybe you can't do the same things that you did before COVID-19, but maybe there is something else God is calling you to do. As a church, we had to change. And in the future, we will not be able to go back doing things the way that they had been done before. We have continued to seek new ways of being Christ's church. We have had to act. What is God calling you to do during this uncertain time? If it is safe, do it. Don't be hesitant. I know I'm glad I acted this morning and cut my hair. Peace and towels, Pastor Wes Johnson.